All right, we're back. But we got someone new today, Mr. Bryan Fowler, joining us for the first time. Ryan and Price unable to make it. So, Bryan, welcome. Do you want to say hi to the audience?
Yeah, thanks. Bryan here, new to the HE team, really excited to be here. Spent some time at Epic in the past as well as Data Vance. So looking forward to all the cool things we've been doing here. A little bit about me. Yeah, I'm in the Cleveland area now and working on healthcare interoperability.
And new-ish, given you joined in like Q1, but we'll count it. New
Yep.
guy for the time being, for at least a few more weeks. The big question, definitely interop focused in nature because connects to you. I don't know. Is LeBron coming back?
Gosh, yeah, fingers crossed. So the 2016 championships were big. Cleveland recently redid a mural of the 2016 championship team. I don't know. Seems unlikely, but there's still a chance. And if there's a chance, we're waiting for it.
That would be fun symbolism to it for me. Let's go Sixers. Let's go Birds. But on to the actual interop of the day. Wow. Not really interop, more epic news and more big news that shook the industry. Sumit Rana, the senior leader, the proposed heir to Judy at Epic, leaving in the all-time pre-July 4th drop, right? Everyone's checking out, whatever, and then all of a sudden it's like, go check your phone. Something's happening, and there's a disturbance in the force. Anyone have thoughts or takes?
As the only non-Epic person on the team, and also the only person from Wisconsin, I feel like I've got a little bit of perspective. Never met Sumit, and definitely think that there could be some succession level machinations behind the scene. But I do think we should just leave open the chance that Epic has been massively successful, probably compensated their executives pretty well, and some people just really want to be on a beach. So I'm here if there is drama that comes out. I think it's really interesting. Judy loves the power of three. I remember she had 3 people that were going to take over after she passed, or ownership wise, and now she selected 3 people. It's an interesting. There's a 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now you got to run me through it. What did I miss?
Well, before we do, Bryan, any quick takes?
Bryan.
Coming from Epic, this is a really big shock for folks to see that Sumit has been a really present personality with conferences, with public speaking, things like that. Just generally fits the mold for a lot of expectations for succession, perhaps, like having a background in software development, being really prominent with the Epic ecosystem in general in the community. So seeing him leave and on such short notice is definitely a shock. I almost wonder, just like LeBron, are we looking for the biggest boomerang in Epic history? Come back as CEO, something crazy like that.
That's definitely been surmised by some people. The stated reason for leaving was that his father passed last fall, that he's going back to India, where he grew up, and he's going to be with his mother for some time and his family. We don't have to be sympathetic to that story. We should at least assume that it's a part, if not the major part, if not the whole part of the story. But generally, something so abrupt takes multiple small pushes or big pushes or pulls. And so you could imagine a corporation like Epic that is going through a tumultuous time, right, with the litigation, with the pressure from digital health, with administrations that have trended from meaningful use era where EHRs were not held with praise, but the administrations look to cater and gain their favor and collaborate with them. And that collaboration has shifted over the last decade and a half to be a pejorative view, a view of them being entrenched, incumbents. Why did we do meaningful use? That sort of sentiment, you could imagine there being pull to other greener pastures, particularly of AI of nature. And so certainly people have posited OpenAI or Anthropic or Microsoft being an eventual destination for him, as he was, by all accounts from some of the employees, AI pilled.
Big into Anthropic, right?
Well, I mean, they adopted Claude en masse, right? They are heavy Claude users internally. So, there's a relationship there. Microsoft is part of their stack, and so there's a relationship there. Yeah, so I don't put it at a high chance necessarily, but it certainly seems possible.
You say there are probably a lot of little pushes that lead that a big announcement like this. It's not a particularly leaky organization. So what was that weird? You found that strange employee feedback app.
Jodel.
We got to go check Jodel to see whether or not there's additional intel.
For those who missed it, Jodel is a social networking app that's used by Saudi Arabia, by West Point, by a number of German college towns, and it's anonymous in nature. it's public, right? You're not posting in a private group, it's a public group, but it is anonymous. And so you see it in areas where identity of social media posts could be used against you. In Saudi Arabia, where it could be used against you by a slightly oppressive government at times. West Point, where deviating from the expected code and conduct could be extremely impactful. And Epic, where social media is largely banned. And so it is certainly a place of commentary on anything that happens in the Epic verse.
And the source of some bigger news, right? That's how we found out about Claude being introduced internally at Epic and some other things. So yeah, definitely not like a traditional news source, but a really easy way to get into the ground level details of what people are talking about at Epic.
Yeah. And they are talking about it, right? Many do posit what you mentioned, Brad. The stock went up 33% in February. That's on top of other gains. Like they are bucking the system of record trend where by and large the rise of AI has really hurt Salesforce, has really hurt ServiceNow, has really hurt most public and private valuations of systems of record because they view AI as being able to crack them open and steal a lot of the value. We've talked before whether or not that's warranted, but certainly that's what's being reflected in the market to date. And yet, at least according to Jodel and other sources, Epic's stock trends up at such a rate that people in there 3 or 5 years are getting 6 figures, 7 figures. And so you imagine what Sumit must be banking given his long tenure. And it's not unreasonable to say, hey, let me go take care of my mother. Let me go buy the lake house, the private jet, the whole shebang.
The lake house in the private jet. I mean,
that would take some money, I think.
The other thing that you alluded at, and we're certainly making no predictions, but has the OIG indicated interest in information blocking towards one of the big E's, whether or not it's Epic and whether or not somebody ends up winning or losing. That's just a lot of stress for something that you're not interested in and really is orthogonal to day-to-day concerns. And maybe that's just like a younger man's game, if you will, maybe a very, very young man's game.
He's already deposed. He's already deposed in Texas, right? He's deposed in article and some of these other ones, right? Senior leaders, by and large, try and loop you in. There's protections you can have in court to protect senior leaders from frivolous waste of their time and things like that. But you can assume he's pretty busy with that. And as soon as the DOJ, FTC, ONC case kicks off against them, well, then you assume he's going to be on the stand. And so I think that's true. If you're a technologist, you're like, I just want to go make AI shit. Don't want to be in lawsuits necessarily. So that certainly could be part of the mech.
Yeah, there's definitely an assumed responsibility if he remains at Epic. And so even if he's not as active in his traditional duties, I would assume he gets pulled in all sorts of ways.
And so the last factor of a push factor, right? The pull being AI, the non-polar push being some of the money and the court cases and things like that, changing the dynamics of the position. The push could be a coup, could be politics, could be internal drama. There's not strong evidence of that, right? But there's been rumors of that before with Karl Dvorak and him allegedly sort of being pushed out a few years before some of the other incidents have happened. So there's the rumor mill continues to turn about that. It's only really validated by departure of other senior leaders. I think that still could, even without internal drama, that still could happen given that's just what happened when leadership changes. When leadership changes, if you've yoked your wagon to Sumit and suddenly someone who is junior dude leaps you or someone you don't like is potential leader, well, you might consider a move or you might consider retirement yourself.
Two things on that. One, for the screenwriters who are trying to pitch HBO, we would love to work on the show. Keep us in mind. Two,
it's Netflix now, right? It's Netflix. Like,
sure.
You think Larry Ellison's company is going to do? Well, maybe actually.
Yeah, they want to make him look terrible. It's going to be spicy.
Game of Thrones epic edition. Yeah.
Fair. Okay. But so I was misinformed. Who's going to be next? There's 4 quadfecta. Is that what we're looking at?
So it's called, there's a Latin term. It's like a triumvirate. It's a quadrumvirate. There were a number of call she potential leaders here in terms of engineers like Seth Hain, their AI lead, Seth Howard, longtime leader, Sterling Martin, longtime leader. Bryan, did you know any of these names? Are these familiar when I'm saying them to you?
Yeah, definitely. So folks that have been prominent at things like UGM and done presentations for more at least when I was there, more siloed features, like you said, AI and cool stuff ahead, but also traditionally with software development backgrounds.
And so a lot of people are naming them, right? And Seth Hain has certainly been very public in a way that, we say Sumit has been public, but Sumit's public in the way that Judy was public, which is known, which is public to customers, which is presenting at UGM. He does some public facing stuff, but if you go search YouTube and like things like that, there's not like tons of videos and interviews of him. There's some, but not as many as many other leaders from Epic now or from tech more broadly. In the past couple of years, they do have leaders who project into the market. It's been a new trend for them. Maybe the last 5 years, I think they got a new marketing lead a couple years ago. And since then, they have Seth Haynes as this AI nebula lead. He's definitely has personality and some charisma, like the nerdy engineer charisma. And he's on stage at Microsoft and Anthropic. They have Jackie Gerhardt, right? He's CMO or some high level medical position. And again, tons of charisma, great at presenting, very public facing. So there's some people like that. And then they have winners, I would call them. People that have been thrown at things internally at Epic and continually won. So Fritz Schmidt, who's, go ahead, Bryan.
I was going to say like the Allens, the Fritz.
Yeah, they say who are they?
Yeah, so with Alan Hutchinson, did I get that right? So yeah, with Alan Hutchinson, someone who's been very prominent in some of the major kind of fast turnaround wins for Epic with a heir platform and a really vocal advocate in the new growth space. And then Fritz, maybe you take a hit at Fritz because I'm less familiar with him.
But you can't even really find him. But like he was, when I was in the Netherlands, he was the lead of the Epic Denvos office and sort of turned it around. He turned around home health into what's now Dorothy. He launched some level of the services stuff they have out there. I think Boost, but maybe all of it. And now I don't know if he's in charge of IS or like Lars is, but he and Lars both are high level in terms of implementation. So proven winner, like you said, Alan Hutchinson, many people mentioned him because Community Connect is like one of the biggest things for Epic. It's extending down market. And then certainly Epic Payer Platform, these other initiatives have been varying levels of high success. There's winners like that, but there's a big if or a big but there for all of them. Can you guess what that is?
They're not developers by background.
They're not developers. So
which is a very clearly stated goal of Judy's succession plan.
Yeah, and so the thought was like, okay, if we're gonna get a Jackie or a Fritz or an Alan, it'd be really an about face on some stated things. And could that happen? And the answer, at least for right now, seems to be no, because in the follow up to Sumit's email last Friday was an email from Judy a day or two ago that said there's a chosen group of leaders that will be rising to the responsibilities, taking on the various responsibilities of Sumit. And so that is one of the market leaders, right? We have Seth Howard as one of the people that was seen as leader and is indeed one of these people named by Judy. We have Irv Walter, who is a longtime developer. He's well known. He's been around and has been visible. He's a very poignant story about his own heart transplant that you can go and see on Epic site. I'm not exposing PHI here. He's also known for being the face of Epic's ill-fated return to work initiative in 2020, where they were trying to get everyone back in like August 2020, which is a little bit earlier than many other corporations. Let's see, who are the other two?
I had another surprise one I think I saw on call sheet was Sam Peterman, who I believe is or was headed Epic Core, so Epic's kind of international arm of technical services and implementation teams.
Well, that was on Cal sheet. He was not one of the anointed.
I was going to say, like, how that seems another step beyond some of the other folks we talked about.
Well, a certain point, people are just naming people just to add them to the discourse, and I think that was one of them. But we had Mark Lipsky, another software development leader. Do you know him?
The rev cycle lead for the R&D team for a good portion there.
He's getting rave reviews internally, like from the Jodels and the Reddit and stuff. He's not as public as Seth is or Irv.
Very engaged with customer escalations, customer relationship management when it comes to rev cycle. And yet, as we see things moving down market, as we see things moving beyond just the clinical point of care, rev cycle is a very huge product space for Epic. So that could make sense as well.
Totally. And the last one I think is almost of this like sort of Sam Peterman vibe is this Garrett Adams. Like, in this one I just didn't know, but he was a dark horse pick. People did mention him in various Slack groups and WhatsApp and LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay, they're just tossing him in there, but he's led or leads the Epic Care ambulatory R&D division. He's young compared to these other names, right? Everyone else is like, they started in 1990, maybe they're late 40s, early 50s. And Garrett maybe started 2 years before I did, right? Like 2010 or something. But yet he's joining this council, the Quadrumvirate, and has been the public face for ART, their AI product. he's probably the interesting wild card added to it all.
The real long-term bet on Kalshi is that Sumit is actually taking a leave of absence to figure out how to upload Judy's consciousness to an AI so that she can rule Epic forever.
Mother looks all over us. This leadership council could be a race, right? Who shall win? Who shall prove himself? It could be to groom a specific CEO or leader out of that crew. Like maybe Lipsky or Garrett is someone that they need to mature into the position and make sure customers are comfortable with. Or it could just be a temporary measure because Judy is still very much here, still very much with it, still very much a leader driving Epic. So more to come. We shall see, especially as we head towards UGM, the user group meeting for Epic next month, and also any potential other exits we may see from upper management in the weeks or months to come. But shifting gears here, what else did you read this week?
I have one,
Bryan,
yes. Don Rucker, one of our good friends, the previous national coordinator at the ONC, involved with a number of high-profile regulation updates, was recently on one of our friends' podcasts talking about a number of things, but specifically patient matching, and if that is a problem for interoperability and different players in the space might interact with patient matching. And so one of the things Don was talking about was that a patient walks in, they verify their identity. They're usually going through an eligibility check before they're ever actually on the schedule or seen by a provider. And then the payer involved in that visit, all of those users have very good information about who the patient is. And patient matching isn't really as big of an issue as it may seem to be in the broader community. And I think it's a good point, but I also wonder how much of that misses broader longitudinal care and things. And so where's the mismatch? Like, why are we hearing that patient matching is a problem? It's not a problem. Like, what's going on?
The success of patient matching for those flows, for eligibility for the clearinghouse flows, is predicated on a shared patient identifier, the member ID. And so if we just like strip out the nuances of everything, why aren't we driving towards that, right? Of course, a shared patient ID would improve matching rates. And you see that actually, right? In the CMS health tech ecosystem, there's this big dialogue and this big push and big fight really about Clear and ID.me issuing a patient identifier so that it can be a deterministic link. There's a huge dialogue and fight over social security number and the validity of it, the usefulness of it as a shared patient identifier, right? With some proponents saying, oh yeah, well, if we have it, we should use it. And others saying, well, there's security problems with it or privacy problems with it. That's always been part of the equation. We live in a world where many scenarios, as you're saying, Bryan, don't have that, don't have the chance to collect a social security number, be issued the deterministic ID from Clear or ID.me, or otherwise have a shared patient identifier. Congress certainly has had trouble for many decades ever getting their shit together and getting over the hump in terms of changing their mind about a national patient identifier. But that is a piece of the puzzle, a possible piece of the solve in the equation.
We've seen it play out somewhat in other countries where a national identifier, a healthcare identifier, is used to kind of connect systems of record to each other. You know, you talked about there's been some sensitivity with those identifiers in the US and reusing a semi-financial or security related number for healthcare purposes. And, you know, does everyone need to have access to that full identifier? Is there a risk of sharing it too broadly? Those kind of things. What gets to me is not just, you know, can we make a single deterministic link in an acute instance? But it's how are we addressing the overall problem across many different sources that have useful reasons for being involved in the provisioning of healthcare, the payment, all those things, and recognize that there are more issues than just, is the Brendan that walked in front of me actually Brendan? And can I submit a claim and actually get reimbursed for the care that I'm giving Brendan? Versus once I pull Brendan up in my EHR, do I have everything I need to know about Brendan to provide valuable care that day? And so connecting care gaps, connecting your urgent care visits from the last few months to make sure there isn't something we should follow up on. All of those are things that require more than just a single point of identity verification. It's connecting the whole system in a way that all players, regardless of whether their individual use case justifies access to a sensitive identifier, can still communicate in a way that's productive and, again, gives the providers what they need to give the best care.
Bryan, you and I have talked about this before. When I was a younger man and liked to mess around with various technologies, I have tons of email addresses, multiple Google phone numbers. I use Brad and Bradley intermittently across all these systems. I am an Aetna member who also uses the CVS app, and I have two different CVS reward accounts for two different numbers, and try as I might to sit on the phone, never been able to get them to merge those two accounts, which is great because my coupons don't add up quickly enough. That's the only negative. And I know there's that problem on health record side. You listed all of the different pieces of information. Alternatively, like having systems that don't overlap one-to-one is also a form of things fraud prevention. And part of me worries, I'm not educated enough to make a definitive comment on it, but I do think given the way that we pay for care, that we don't have a MPI across every payer, and like every payer's internal systems are different. I feel like we're introducing a potential huge risk for system abuse by people who understand how to very quickly use a patient identifier and get out. I mean, we see it in Medicare fraud all the time. Does this not increase the risk? And maybe that risk is fine. Like the instances of failures of care or of misbilling are so much higher than that, the potential downsides. I don't know if either of you have opinions on that particular double-edged sword.
Well,
I think
Brennan just licked his lips, so I just opened a can of worms.
Let him cook.
one, Brian's earlier point, international countries have figured this out, right? Like the Netherlands.
Yeah, but they
has the-
started from a
the-
different point.
Let me cook. They have the BSN, the burger social number, which is the tastiest patient identifier you could imagine. And that is when you are doing anything to really interact with the system, you do a BSN check against the government registry, and it strongly gives you back that burger social number, and it's then used for almost every transaction. And there's edge cases where it's unavailable, but just a pain in the ass. And so once you've built the contained system of strong identity checks on the edges, well, suddenly everything just works a little bit more seamlessly and you have that identifier. I'm excited because sans Congress or other top-down regulations of we must create that perimeter, like forces are having it happen via this digital identity wave, right? You see Clear and ID.me and Persona being inserted, the TAFCA individual access services apps. You see Clear and ID.me and those starting to be inserted at MyChart and patient portal edges and employee edges. Certainly there's identity proofing for prescription of controlled substances. The more that we build strong identity checking, well, by default, we get the deterministic identifiers of those different credential service providers. And then there's still some problems. What if I've done ID.me before and then I do Clear for another one? So interoperability of the CSPs, but it's better and you get cleaner demographics, which allow for cleaner matching. So I think that's a big force for good. The caveat being that there's a strong vocal minority in the US that views digital identity as the same way they view vaccines or microchips, put under your skin. And so there is certainly
Is that who I
pushback.
just
There's certainly pushback to this force for good that digital identity is offering.
Yeah, I was going to respond back to something you said earlier, Brad, about like, does this introduce a risk for fraud in terms or underpayment? My counterpoint would be, well, maybe we're reducing the risk of over ordering. Don't get duplicative procedures, duplicative labs, because we're able to see like, oh yeah, Brendan just had a CBC last week. Maybe I don't need to order that again. Those kind of things would also go down. So we kind of have to look at it on all sides and see like, are there meaningful use cases for the exchange of data? Surely there are. And how do we make that accessible to the players in the system, even though they're not necessarily the system of record? They're engaged in improving healthcare, lowering costs, providing better outcomes for patients.
And fraud takes many flavors, right? There's many flavors of fraud. There's financial fraud, and the government, in terms of their prerogatives, it's like, let's stamp out financial fraud, the defrauding of the US government, because it's wasteful spend and should be given back to taxpayers. At the same time, making money off the taxpayers, defrauding patients in terms of taking clinical data and selling it and things like that. We have an increased permissiveness for data access that we're willing to accept higher levels of that latter type of fraud. At the same time, they're really clamping down on the former. That distinction of the two frauds is worth delineating because there's incredibly divergent perspectives going on right now as we really stop one and really start to allow the other, right? False positives and false negatives. Speaking of the government, we had some cool stuff happen this week. The unified agenda, after a long pause, came out of the woodwork, right? It's a semi-annual plan since the Clinton era where they say what they're going to do. the different agencies. Do they do what they're going to do? Not always, but they say what they're going to do, and it gives some perspective of what the Office of Management Bureau. Oh, I'm saying, hey, here's what's going on across us, and which month we're gonna go get certain things done. And so we saw some tidbits there.
And they say that this is going to be a semi-annual report, but how does that actually played out in recent?
We've seen slippage, continued slippage. Administration from administration, it's like it's supposed to be in April, well, it's in July. It's supposed to be in September, well, it's in October or November. I actually did a post a while back where it just showed over the administrations how it slipped and slipped and slipped. And we've had a reset once before in the Obama era where Obama's like, all right, we missed this one. And people say it's because midterms were coming up and they didn't want to go and they wanted to do their initiatives, but after midterms, some truth to that potentially based on what we saw, because then all of a sudden they were pretty on time again for the next couple. But this one, way overdue, right? The last one we saw was spring 2025, no fall 2025, no spring 2026. We're almost in fall 2026, and they did a single airdrop, the big 2026. They only branded it 2026 Unified Agenda. But we're excited. We love regulation. We love deregulation. We love everything that our government regulators do. And that's not true, but we appreciate the drama and the excitement of them making moves and the effects it has on the industry. And so we saw a date to HTI 5, right? The proposed rule that was proposed in the early of the year, 2026 in February or so, potentially out next month. Are we ready?
I think more than anything, these drops give us common vocabulary. As we're talking with other folks in the community, if we're talking with health systems, and it's like, well, okay, this new feature sounds great, but how do we actually get someone to buy in on an implementation, on development? Being able to point to something and say, hey, this is real. We're getting a drop where it's going to be potentially finalized on a certain date. Like, this is what we can expect. That at least starts a conversation. For a very long time, like things like HIPAA, we're just like, how many people have misquoted HIPAA and said, oh, I can't talk about this or I can't do XYZ because of HIPAA. And it takes going through this process of getting drafts out and getting approved and just talking through the concepts so that we can land on, okay, what does this actually mean for developers, for providers, for anyone that's kind of looking at taking advantage of new features. New features are great, but I like it. There's so much hesitation in this space around sensitive information or security concerns and things like that, that it really takes a solid definition for people to latch on and get things moving.
Generally, frequency of comment or activity shows intention or interest, and that drives private actors to start to take something seriously. I don't know that ONC certified products have taken their initial attestations overly seriously for many, many years. And now there seems to be making really good faith efforts at meeting standards deadlines. And that can't be divorced from the increased activity or increased publishing activity of the former ASTP, now ONC. And so if nothing else, generally very positive about the publishing, even if the regulations or the intentions aren't always maybe things that I would push for. It certainly spurs the large actors in the space to start being compliant, participatory, et cetera.
Well, harkening back to one of our earlier conversations in this episode, we did see a rule in the Unified Agenda related to identity, maple syrup identity from the FDA. As we're scanning through, I'm like, oh my God, an identity rule from HHS.org. And then it was maple syrup identity to make sure the provenance of the maple syrup is appropriate. And that's
Those
not just
things.
Grade A, grade B.
Yes.
is it Aunt Jemima's, how do we reconcile and have interoperability for Aunt Jemima's and other flavors? But we had HDI 5, and then we had HDI 6 both listed in there. We'll get the HDI 5 first. Not much new except a date of August, but it has the HR Association spooked. So the HR Association did a post about it, right? We had the comment period ages ago. So the comments were, are shipped. They're public. We've reviewed them. We've read them. But all of a sudden on their blog, the HR Association posted and said, we have a series of posts. This is the first post analyzing the HTI 5 proposed rule and the complexity that it adds rather than reducing it. One, it sounds like they're spooked by this rule, which hypothetically was a deregulatory rule for their benefit. And yet, as we've said before, and it's pretty obvious, it's not, because the information blocking considerations, the changes they propose, they're quite burdensome to EHRs. And the HR Association is not shy about saying, The 10-day business response window is unworkable, that defining fair market rates is going to force a ton of formal valuations that are going to be costly for every product, every integration, that there's contradictions of the contract of adhesion language with the ONC's own requirement to publish standardized API terms. Like, these are all fair critiques that hopefully were in their comment, because that's the right way to do it. So why would they do this blog post? Well, it's sort of to signal, hey, as you finalize, you may consider that there could be legal challenges. Oftentimes is a strategy of these associations. Notably, they say that there's missing burden estimates, that this deregulatory rule, well, could actually not be deregulatory. They fail to do burden estimates, which they were required to do. And to me, that signals, hey, we might push on this. You push something crazy out the door, we're going to push back on procedural grounds. And in a deregulatory environment, right? On paper, this administration is deregulatory. Well, something that turns the watchful eye of Sauron upon our regulators that are regulating through deregulation. That would be a big no-no and could cause some heads to roll. That's a fun dramatic twist.
Dramaful.
And then this fall, we get the big finale. Well, at least the next sequel in a series that is really competitive with Moana and others in terms of frequency. The HTI 6 series is going to drop a proposed rule, hypothetically in November, and looks to be a lot of fun.
But you can clearly tell Brendan is the father of small children with the Moana reference.
I just can't believe they did one. Like, Moana 2 was last year, and now they have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in a live action one. Like, come on.
Yeah, but Moana 2 was supposed to be a TV show that they decided they were going to push into the theaters to help save Disney's cinema business. And
do you have kids, or are you just like a cinemaphile?
I'm just a cinemaphile. Most people don't know this, but I used to run a movie ticket website, so I still follow trade blogs on the topic. Anyway,
Moviephone.com, Brad Thorson's child.
Not my child, adoptive child, who I gave up for foster care. Bringing it back. Fire subscriptions has been something that the community has been talking about for a really long time. And we know some EHRs have been working on them, potentially looking to introduce them. But seeing that as a component of future EHR or certified IT software is pretty exciting and honestly potentially eroding of some of our business, because one of the hardest things to do for many applications is to figure out whether or not they should do something. Oftentimes it's an HL7 message, which requires you having VPC with the if it's a hosted EHR. It's not a novel pattern. It just takes a lot of work. And the rest of software has moved on to using patterns like webhooks to indicate to third-party applications there's been a change of state. You should look into it, and it uses the same authentication pattern. So I think from a ease of developing applications in combination with information blocking, where there needs to be interfaces to read and write, this is potentially monumental. We'll probably get like a certification date of like 1/1/32, but I think, yeah, very, very excited.
It gives us that framework of, if you attest to being certified, meeting that criteria, okay, well, now other folks that are trying to integrate with you, if they're finding that not to be true, well, you kind of have to defend yourself or face the risk of litigation. So having that path lets us iterate and improve, whereas, leaving it up to the vendors, we might not see those things happen.
What we're going to see, we see strong signals for people that have not followed the old episodes and things like that, but subscriptions is this big one. We expect API forward certification criteria in addition to that, like CDS hooks, maybe smart health cards or links, maybe some fire write. Argonaut has done work on terms of writing some data back to the HR. And so
or time-based
or dereg around APIs.
Say more.
Having certification criteria move to programmatic interfaces versus visual interfaces, and making it easier for an entity to prove that they can in fact provide a certain amount of data or drive to certain outcomes. In doing so, having to expose the interface in which a third party would integrate with them. So a lot of attestations around like, are you driving towards better prescriptions? We're not necessarily using deterministic testing. And I think HTI 6 is theoretically going to move us in that direction, which is also exciting.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, I think. So deregs via HTI 5 got rid of a lot of the UI components. Some are statutorily need to be in the criteria, but HTI 6 could API-ify them, right?
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's a cool, it would be pretty exciting if they chose to pursue that and, further remove the user interface considerations that are tightly bound into the criteria. I do think subscriptions is the most exciting piece, right? If you're a patient app, great. You can get more data without polling all the time. If you're an analytics app, you can do your bulk poll and then stay up to date with subscriptions. Like those are nice additive things, but patient apps and analytics apps are pretty well served by the regs today. It's the provider solutions, those point solutions, the wide host of scribes and HCC coding apps and lab information systems, everything that sits ancillary in the ecosystem to the EHR. They've been underserved by the regs. FHIR's been nice to pull additional information if you know a patient, but not to know which patients are relevant to you. Enrollment of the patients, the relevant population to your application. And subscriptions are such a nice way to accomplish that if the regs actually focus on it. And it's a big if, because our good friends at Argonaut, who have done all the work on all the great things of FHIR, on bulk, on the base REST API, on the FHIR Write stuff, well, they did a FHIR subscriptions implementation guide or piece of the US core implementation guide and the patient data feed, which uses subscriptions, but it's not focused on the enrollment event. It's focused on was a note created, was a lab resulted, was a vital put in, right? Those are great things, but typically those aren't the most common enrollment events. It's was a patient created, was an encounter started, was a appointment scheduled, was an order placed. And of those four, those are the big four that I can think of. Bryan, what do you think? Are there any other good enrollment mechanisms that come to mind?
I mean, changing plans,
Coverage.
any kind of coverage or billing related updates. Yeah, I think that's one of the bigger ones that comes to my mind.
That's a good one. I didn't think I want that one, but that's a great point. I didn't care about when you were on Aetna. Now you're on a value-based plan or something, and my app does care about you. Certainly is a potential enrollment trigger. Well, we didn't focus on that. We focused on supplementation, making supplementation easier. So we're going from FHIR that works pretty well to FHIR that works really excellent, rather than saying we don't have FHIR, we don't have a standardized capability for enrollment. Let's get one. And so I hope our regulators are prudent enough and thoughtful enough in this HTI 6 rule to propose it. Because if not, we're going to comment pretty vocally. But with that, we're running out of time for the day. So thanks to the audience. Hope to see you soon. Thank you, Bryan.
See y'all.
Bye, guys.